There are moments in life when you realize that the hardest battle isn't against the world. It isn't against your circumstances. It isn't even against other people. The hardest battle is against the version of yourself that quietly accepted less than you were capable of becoming. For a long time, I thought change happened all at once. One decision, one breakthrough, one unforgettable moment. Now I know better. Real change is almost invisible while it's happening. It hides inside ordinary evenings, ordinary choices, ordinary runs like this one. Tonight, I'm back on this old, half-abandoned stadium. The same cracked lanes, the same darkness, the same narrow beam from my headlamp cutting through the night. At first glance, nothing has changed. But that's the illusion. The place looks the same. I'm not. Maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding about growth. We expect life around us to become different before we believe we're making progress. We wait for obvious signs. A better job, a stronger body, a perfect opportunity, recognition from other people. But transformation rarely announces itself. It whispers, quietly, patiently, one decision at a time. I've started thinking about identity in a different way. People often ask how someone becomes disciplined, how someone becomes resilient, how someone becomes mentally strong. I don't think those things suddenly appear. I think they're earned through repetition. Every promise you keep becomes another vote for the person you're trying to become. Every excuse becomes another vote for the person you're trying to leave behind. Most of us don't make one life-changing decision. We make hundreds of tiny ones. Eventually, they point us in a direction. That's why I no longer underestimate small choices. Choosing to run tonight won't change my life by itself. Neither will reading one chapter or waking up when the alarm rings. But stack enough ordinary decisions together, and suddenly people call it transformation. From the inside, it never felt dramatic. It felt like another night, another lap, another promise kept. I think that's one of the reasons so many people quit. They expect growth to feel exciting every day. It doesn't. Most days it feels repetitive. The same shoes, the same track, the same breathing, the same effort. The difference is invisible. Until one day, you realize your mind no longer argues the way it used to. You notice that discomfort doesn't scare you as much. You recover faster after setbacks. You stop looking for reasons to quit. Not because life became easier, because you've quietly become someone who no longer negotiates with every obstacle. That's a different kind of strength. It isn't loud. It doesn't need attention. It simply keeps moving. Every lap around the stadium reminds me that discipline is less about intensity and more about reliability. Can I trust myself? That's become one of the most important questions in my life. Not, am I talented? Not, am I lucky? Not even, am I motivated? Can I trust myself to do what I said I would do? Because trust isn't built through confidence. It's built through evidence. Every completed run becomes another piece of evidence. Every difficult evening becomes another reminder that my standards are becoming stronger than my emotions. I've stopped chasing motivation. Motivation is unpredictable. Some nights it arrives before I lace up my shoes. Other nights it never appears. Discipline doesn't ask whether inspiration showed up. It simply asks, who are you becoming tonight? That's the question echoing through this empty stadium. Who am I becoming? Not tomorrow, not next month, tonight. Because the person I'll become a year from now is being shaped by decisions that feel almost insignificant today. That's the strange thing about life. The smallest choices often create the biggest consequences. No single drop of rain creates a canyon, but enough of them, given enough time, can reshape an entire landscape. Maybe we're no different. Maybe character is carved the same way. Not through one extraordinary act, but through thousands of ordinary ones. One quiet night after another. One run after another. One promise after another. And before you even notice, the person who steps off the track is no longer the same one who stepped onto it. The more time I spend on this track, the more I realize that becoming stronger isn't about creating a new person. It's about removing everything that keeps the real one hidden. Fear, excuses, the constant need for approval, the belief that conditions have to be perfect before we can begin. Those things don't define us. They simply cover us, like layers of dust collecting over something valuable. Every honest decision wipes away another layer. Not all at once, just enough to see a little farther than yesterday. I think we spend too much time trying to become someone else. We compare ourselves to people we've never met. We measure our beginning against someone else's middle. We chase lives that were never meant to be ours. Running has slowly taught me to stop doing that. This track doesn't ask me to outrun another person. It asks me one simple question. Can I become a little better than the man who arrived here tonight? That challenge is enough. Because if I keep answering yes often enough, the distance between who I am and who I could become becomes a little smaller. Not because life changes, because I do. There was a time when I believed progress should always be visible. If I couldn't see dramatic results, I assumed nothing was happening. Now I understand how misleading that idea is. You don't notice a tree growing every day. You don't notice a child becoming taller every morning. You don't notice your own character changing after one difficult decision. Growth hides inside repetition. It asks for patience. It asks for trust. It asks you to continue long before there is proof. That's difficult. Our minds love certainty. They want guarantees. They want to know that every sacrifice will produce a reward. Life rarely works that way. Most of the important things require faith before evidence. Not blind faith. Faith built through action. One completed run makes the next run easier to believe in. One promise kept makes the next promise easier to keep. Confidence isn't something we find. It's something we slowly collect, one decision at a time. As I move into another lap, I notice something that makes me smile. This stadium is almost always empty. No spectators, no runners, no conversations drifting through the night. Just silence. At first, that silence felt lonely. Now it feels peaceful. But tonight, I'm not completely alone. Near the edge of the track, caught in the beam of my headlamp, I see a familiar little shape. The hedgehog is back. The first time we met, he disappeared almost immediately. He heard me coming, froze for a second, then quietly disappeared into the darkness before I had a chance to appreciate the moment. Tonight is different. This time he doesn't run away. He calmly looks in my direction, almost as if he's trying to figure out why this strange human keeps running endless circles through the night. For a few moments, neither of us is in a hurry. I even have time to take out my camera and film him. Then, just as calmly as he arrived, he continues on his way, disappearing into the grass beyond the track. It lasts less than a minute, but somehow, it becomes one of my favorite moments of the entire run. Maybe because it reminds me that life is always happening around us. Even in places people have forgotten. Even in darkness. Even in silence. We often mistake quiet for emptiness. They're not the same thing. Silence isn't empty. It's simply spacious enough for us to notice things we've been missing. The hedgehog probably has no idea that he became part of this journey. He isn't trying to inspire anyone. He isn't trying to prove anything. He's simply moving forward, following his own path. There's something strangely beautiful about that. How often do we lose our own direction because we're too busy watching everyone else's? Maybe real confidence looks a little like that little hedgehog. Not loud, not seeking attention, not trying to impress anyone. Simply continuing, exactly as it was created to do. As I put the camera away and begin another lap, I realized that tonight wasn't memorable because something extraordinary happened. It was memorable because I noticed something ordinary. Maybe that's another lesson I've been learning here. A meaningful life isn't built only from extraordinary moments. It's built from paying attention to ordinary ones. A cool breeze, a steady heartbeat, the sound of running shoes against old asphalt, a tiny visitor crossing the track, a promise kept after a long day. Those moments seem small until you realize they're quietly becoming your life. Maybe that's what it means to truly be present. Not chasing a future that hasn't arrived. Not replaying a past that can't be changed. Simply recognizing that this lap, this breath, this quiet night will never happen again. And that makes it valuable. As the run begins to slow, I realize something that would have been impossible for me to understand a few years ago. The biggest victories in life rarely feel like victories while they're happening. They feel ordinary. A decision to get out of bed. A decision to lace up your shoes. A decision to keep moving after a difficult day. No music. No celebration. No dramatic soundtrack. Just another quiet choice. We often imagine that transformation arrives with a single unforgettable moment. But life has shown me something different. Transformation usually whispers. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for attention. It simply appears after enough ordinary days have been lived with extraordinary consistency. Maybe that's why people underestimate discipline. They only notice the result. They don't see the evenings when nobody wanted to continue. They don't see the mornings when comfort almost won. They don't see the invisible conversations happening inside someone's mind. Those conversations matter because that's where every meaningful decision is born. I've had countless conversations with myself on this track. I pause. I ask myself, will this decision make tomorrow's version of me grateful or disappointed? It's a surprisingly powerful question because tomorrow always arrives. And when it does, we inherit the consequences of today's choices. Not all at once, quietly, just as we inherit the benefits of today's discipline. Sometimes people ask how to become mentally stronger. I don't think strength comes from pretending that life is easy. It comes from refusing to let difficulty become your identity. There is an important difference between experiencing struggle and becoming someone who believes struggle is all they are. Hard seasons are chapters, not the entire story. I've learned that here. When I lost the forest, I thought I had lost an important part of this journey. I couldn't have been more wrong. The location changed. The mission remained. The scenery changed. The commitment remained. The soundtrack changed. The footsteps remained. That realization has reached far beyond running. Life will continue changing the landscape around us. New opportunities, unexpected setbacks, people entering our lives, people leaving them, plans succeeding, plans falling apart. None of those things have the final word. Our response does. Every evening I step onto this old stadium, I have another opportunity to answer the same question. Will I allow my circumstances to decide who I become? Or will I decide that for myself? That question has become one of the quiet foundations of my life. Because freedom isn't found in controlling everything around us. Freedom begins when our values become stronger than our circumstances. I've stopped waiting for life to become easier. Instead, I try to become steadier. Steadier when motivation disappears. Steadier when routines are interrupted. Steadier when progress feels invisible. A steady person doesn't need perfect conditions. A steady person creates consistency inside imperfect conditions. Maybe that's what resilience really is. Not becoming unbreakable. Becoming someone who keeps rebuilding. Again and again and again. Each time with a little more wisdom. A little more patience. A little more gratitude. As I begin the final lap, I notice how familiar this stadium has become. A place that once felt temporary now feels like part of the journey. That makes me smile because it reminds me that human beings have an incredible ability to adapt. We rarely believe it while change is happening. Only afterward. Only when we look back. Only when we realize that what once felt impossible has quietly become normal. Perhaps that's one of the greatest gifts of discipline. It doesn't remove difficulty. It changes your relationship with it. Challenges that once looked overwhelming become manageable. Habits that once demanded enormous effort become automatic. Not because the work disappeared, because you grew into someone capable of carrying it. As I slow to a walk, the beam of my headlamp sweeps across the empty lanes one last time. Everything is quiet again. The little hedgehog is gone. The stadium is still. The night is still, but I leave different than I arrived. Not because I set a record, not because anyone was here to applaud, because I kept another promise. Those promises matter, not because each one changes your life overnight, because together they become your life. One honest decision, one quiet lap, one difficult evening, one promise kept. That's how trust is built. That's how character is built. That's how ordinary people slowly become extraordinary. Not through a single breakthrough, but through countless moments when they choose to continue. And maybe that's the most important lesson this old stadium has given me. You don't have to become someone else. You don't have to wait for a perfect season. You don't have to chase a different life. You simply have to keep becoming more honest, more disciplined, and more consistent than you were yesterday. Not perfectly, just faithfully, one step at a time, one run at a time, one day at a time. Because in the end, our lives are not shaped by the biggest moments. They're shaped by the smallest decisions we refuse to compromise. And tomorrow, when I return to this same old stadium, the journey won't begin again. It will continue, because this was never about reaching a finish line. It has always been about becoming the kind of person who never stops moving forward. I'll see you on the trail tomorrow. Same time, same choice. This is Run to Evolve. One day, one run, one lesson, no excuses.